Hi everyone, I'm Bia, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who don't know, Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. Last week we were talking about the worlds of tests and atonements, and we're reading this in the Gospel according to Spiritism, which brings some of Jesus' teachings and further explains that using Spiritism. So today we're going to start talking about regenerating worlds. And this is in chapter 3 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, section 16. Among the many scintillating stars in the blue canopy of the sky, how many worlds there are like yours, destined by God to serve for atonements and probation. But although there are some that are more miserable, there are also others that are happier, like those of transition, which can be called worlds of regeneration. Each planetary vortex, moving in space, round a common center, drags with its own primitive worlds of exile, probation, regeneration, and happiness. We have spoken to you of worlds where newly born spirits are placed, where they are still ignorant of both good and evil, but where they have been possibility of traveling towards God, being in possession of themselves through free will. We have also revealed to you the fact that ample faculties are given to each soul to enable it to practice good. But alas, there are those who succumb. So God, who does not desire their annihilation, permits them to go to these worlds where one can incarnate to another. They are purified and regenerated, returning worthy of the glory for which they were destined. So here we see that they're explaining that there are worlds that are made for tests and atonements, where there's a lot of struggles, right? And evil prevails. And those are the worlds we were talking about last week. But they're also saying, okay, and there's a lot of these worlds, but there's also a point where these worlds start getting a little more advanced, and they start transitioning to happier worlds. And so when they're in these transition periods from tests and atonements to a happier world, then it's a world of regeneration. It's a regenerating world. And in that case, that planet is evolving and it is moving up, and those that are not ready to move up and advanced with that planet start being sent to other planets so they can take the time that they need to get to their to that phase of evolution, and then once they get there, they could come back. But so when it's transitioning, when you're improving, and in that transition phase, these are the regenerating worlds. Regenerating worlds serve as transition phases between those of probation and happiness. The penitent soul rests on them, finds calm, and continues the purifying process. Beyond doubt, man still finds himself subject to the laws that rule matter. Humanity still experiences your sensations and desires, but is liberated from the ungoverned passions to which you are slaved, freed from pride, which silences the heart, envy which tortures, and hate which suffocates. The word love is written on all sides. Perfect equity resides over all social relationships, and everyone recognizes God and tries to travel in his direction by fulfilling his laws. So here it's saying that, so these regenerating worlds, again, they're in the process of going from a world of probation to a world of happiness. And in that means people still have to follow the rules. They still need rules to guide them. But in all, there's barely any pride, envy, hatred, and love is really what prevails. And even though people might still be making mistakes, they're all trying to follow God's direction and follow that good path. So that's an important thing that we get from the regenerating world, from the probation world. So we know, and then those who are not ready for that, who are not ready to follow God's path, or who are not ready to have love prevail, then they'll go to a different planet where they can continue to evolve there until they're ready for that phase. However, perfect happiness still does not exist in these worlds, only the dawning of happiness. There, man is still of flesh and blood, because of this, subject to vicissitudes, from which only the completely dematerialized beings are liberated. He still has to suffer tests, although without the pungent anguish of atonement. Compared to the earth, these worlds are very pleasant, and many of you would be happy to inhabit them, because they represent the calm after the storm, convalescence after cruel sickness. Therefore, being less absorbed by material things, mankind perceives the future better, comprehends the existence of other pleasures promised by God to those who show themselves worthy, when death has once again released them from their bodies in order to bestow upon them the true life. Free then, the soul hovers above all the horizons, no longer the feeling of gross matter, only the sensation of a pure and celestial paraspirit, absorbing a mansion direction from God, in the fragrance of love and charity coming straight from his breast. So, here what they're saying is how it's not a perfect world, so it's not going to be just happiness all the time, these regenerating worlds, but it's going to be like the beginning of that happiness. They're going to start to understand. So, people are still, humans are still going to be flesh and blood, right? They're still going to be very material, and because of this, there are going to be things that come along with that, vicissitudes that come along with that we can't really avoid when we still have this physical body, right? So there's going to be some struggles that we're going to go through. There's going to be some challenges, some mistakes that we make, but overall, we're getting to that part, that dawning of happiness, of doing good things, of love prevailing. And it's kind of like, and even though it's not a perfect world, we would still be happy there because it's kind of like that calm after the storm, right? So like if the storm is like this world of tests and atonements where evil prevails and it's chaotic, then this world of this regenerating world is kind of a calm period right after that, where okay, there's still some things that you're going through, there's still some challenges you have to make, but it's generally calm and you can handle it and you can see that happiness on the horizon. And then they continue. But alas, humanity is still fallible, even in these worlds, and the spirit of evil has not completely lost its empire. Not to advance is to fall back, and if man is not firmly placed along pathways to righteousness, he may return to a world of atonement, where new and more terrible tests awaits. So at night, at the time of prayer and repose, contemplate the full canopy of the sky, and the innumerable spheres that shine over your head. Ask yourself which ones lead to God, and ask him for one of these regenerating worlds to open to receive you after your atonement here on earth. St. Augustine, Paris, 1862. So here he's kind of summing up again that if you're not advancing with this regenerating world, if this regenerating world's getting to that point of transitioning, of becoming happier, if you're still doing those evil things, you're gonna be put somewhere else, right? You're gonna be sent to a different planet where you're gonna have to go through more tests and atonements, right? A worse planet that you're gonna have to go through more tests and atonements and have to work hard and continue to suffer and struggle until you're ready to be regenerating. So we want to try our best now so that we can stay in a regenerating world, or that after we leave Earth we can go to a regenerating world. So we want to focus our best, because it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. It depends on what we're doing, because that's what's going to put us in regenerating worlds or in a world of tests and atonements. And now we're on to the last section in this chapter, which is the progression of the worlds. So now it's going to be talking about the progress a little bit more. Progress is a law of nature. All beings of creation, be they animated or not, have been submitted to this law through the bounty of God, who wishes everything to be exalted and prosper. Even actual destruction, which appears to be the end of everything, is only a means of reaching a more perfect state through transformation, seeing that everything dies only to be reborn again, suffering no consequences from the annihilation. At the same time as living beings progress morally, so the worlds in which they live progress materially. If we were to accompany a world during its different phases, from the first instance, the atom destined to its construction began to agglomerate, we would see it traveling along only a constantly progressive scale, although these steps would be imperceptible to each generation. It would offer its inhabitation a more agreeable home as these generations passed, according to the manner in which they themselves advanced along their pathways to progress. Nothing in nature remains stationary. So we find that together with man, the animals that are his helpers, the vegetables, the habitation, are all constantly marching along, parallel to one another. How glorious this idea is, and so worthy of the grandeur of the Creator. It would be paltry and unworthy of his power if, on the contrary, he concentrated his solitudes and providence on an insignificant grain of sand, which is this planet, so restricting humanity to a few people who inhabit it. So here it's saying that progress is a law of nature, so everything has to progress. And they're saying, so as we progress, right, morally, so we know we're focusing on our moral progress, right, following the path of good, avoiding evil desires and all that. So as we progress morally, the worlds are progressing materially. So if you look from the beginning to where we are now, you'll see that even the plants have changed, the animals have changed, the vegetables, the food has changed, as we have changed well, right? Corporally, materially, we have changed as well. So as we go evolving, so does the material world that we have. And of course, from generation to generation, you don't really notice these changes, but over a long period of time, you see how this has changed. So as we are evolving, so is everything else around, right, in nature. And this law of nature applies to everything. Everything that God created, which we know is literally everything. So all of that is going to go through these transformations to get to that more perfect state. So even the plants and the animals would become to this more perfect state as we evolve more and we get to more evolved worlds. Then it continues. According to this law, Earth has been in a materially and morally inferior position to that which it finds itself today, and it will lift itself up in both these aspects so as to reach a more elevated degree in the future. The time has now been reached for one of these periodic transformations, which will move the Earth upward from a world of atonement to that of the regenerating planet, where men will be happy because God's law will reign. St. Augustine, Paris, 1862. So we know that, we can see that on Earth specifically, where we are now is much more advanced in all aspects than where our ancestors were way back when. So even the plants, the animals, everything is way more advanced now than it was in the past. And it's also saying that Earth is starting to reach that time that we're transitioning from a world of tests and atonements to a regenerating world. We're getting there, and we're in that regenerating world. Remember, that's going to be where we start finding that happiness, right? That calm after the storm. So we're getting to that part. So people that are not ahead with that are going to start to be put in other planets so that Earth can keep evolving, transforming, and becoming this regenerating world and move away from that. And they said that in 1862, so a lot of time has passed that we have been improving. And you can see the improvements that we've had, right? Even with equality rights, and we're still not perfect, but you see like we've grown really far in getting more rights and more happiness, following good things, right? Loving one another. So although the progress might be slow, it is getting there. It is transforming into a regenerating world instead of a world of tests and atonements. So now we're on to the next chapter, which is chapter 4, and the title of this one is, Except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. So we already know the topics we're going to talk about are resurrection, reincarnation, and the concept of being reborn again, right? Because Jesus said this, except a man being reborn again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. So the first thing that it goes through are passages from the Bible that that shows where we're getting this from. So the first one. When Jesus came to the reign of Caesar Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" Jesus repeated. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven." And that was in Matthew and Mark in the Bible. And then 2. Now Herod the Tetrarch heard about all that was being done by Jesus, and he was perplexed because some were saying that John the Baptist had been raised from the dead, others saying Elijah had reappeared, still others that one of the prophets from long ago had come back to life. Herod said, "I had John beheaded, but who is this about whom I hear such things?" And he desired to see him. Luke and Mark. So, and then there's a third one that they bring from the Bible as well. So this is after his transfiguration. His disciples asked him, "Why then do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus replied, "To be sure, Elijah does come first and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist. So they were talking here about how they're hearing how John the Baptist was raised from the dead and Elijah reappeared and all of this. And in this last one, it kind of shows us how they're understanding that it is a like reincarnation type aspect. But of course, the Bible uses these stories and it doesn't specifically say reincarnation, so people interpret it differently. So now the Gospel according to Spiritism is going to get this quote, this passage from the Bible, and explain it in words of Spiritism so that we can really understand what was meant in these passages. So the first section is resurrection and reincarnation. Reincarnation was part of the Jewish dogmas being taught under the name of resurrection. Only the Sadducees, who believed that everything ended with death, did not accept the idea of reincarnation. Jewish ideas on this point, as on many others, were not clearly defined because they had only vague and incomplete notions with regards to the soul and its connection to the body. So right here it's saying that the term reincarnation and resurrection, they are going towards the same concept, but reincarnation is stated as resurrection in the Bible, and that's where a lot of confusion comes in. It's just the language that was used. They believed that man could live again without knowing exactly the manner by which this could happen. They used the name resurrection for what Spiritism more correctly calls reincarnation. Resurrection presupposes a return to the same physical body, whereas science demonstrates that this is materially impossible, especially when that same body has decomposed and long since been dispersed and reabsorbed. Reincarnation is the return of a soul or spirit to a physical body in another body which has been newly formed for it, and which has nothing to do with the previous one. The word resurrection can be applied to Lazarus, but not Elias, or to the other prophets. If, according to their belief, John the Baptist was Elias, then the body of John cannot have been the same body of Elias, because John was seen as a child, and his parents were known. John then could be Elias's reincarnation, but not resurrected So here, and they're explaining that people believed in reincarnation. They believed that a man could live again, but they didn't really know how that would happen. And what they started saying was resurrection and coming back into the same body. But as we know, that's scientifically impossible, because when someone's corporeal body is dying and, like, say it's buried, it's like deteriorating, right? And it's kind of turning into the soil, and that's it. And then it goes back gets back reabsorbed into the earth, and that's it for that body, right? You can't put that body back if it's already done. So they say what we can more correctly use is the word reincarnation is into a different body, which is completely unrelated and newly formed. It's not like it's someone else's old body. No, this is a newly formed body, and it's completely unrelated to the last one. And that's why they said that resurrection can be applied to Lazarus, right? Like coming back, but not Elias. Because if they're saying that John the Baptist was Elias, then that couldn't be, because John the Baptist was a child, right? He was a child, he had parents, so it wasn't like he just magically resurrected into Elias's body, right? Into the old body. No, he was newly formed and created into a new body. So that concept of reincarnation is here, and it is believed in, but it's just in the terms of resurrection. And now it continues with another passage from the Bible. Now there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a member of the Jewish ruling council. He came to Jesus at night and said, "Rabbi, we know you are a teacher who has come from God. For no one could perform the miracles you are doing if God were not with him." Jesus answered, "Truly I say to you that no one can see the kingdom of God unless he is reborn." Nicodemus asked, "How can a man be reborn when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb to be born?" Jesus answered, "I tell you the truth. No one can enter the kingdom of God unless he is born of water and of spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. Do not be surprised at my saying, you must all be born again. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear the sound it makes, but you cannot tell where it's coming from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit." Nicodemus asked, "How can this be?" Jesus answered and said to him, "You are a teacher in Israel, and yet you do not understand these things. I tell you the truth. We speak of what we know, and we testify to what we have seen, but still you do not accept our testimony. I have told you of earthly things, and you do not believe. How then will you believe if I speak of heavenly things?" And this was in John, in the section John of the Bible. And so this little story here is showing that Jesus said, don't be surprised when I'm saying that all men have to be reborn again to see the kingdom of heaven. Saying, like, we have to reincarnate to get to that state of perfection to be able to be fully connected with God, right? We know we have to reincarnate and evolve to be connected with God. But here he's saying, and then he's like trying to get the answers, right? Nicodemus is trying to understand, and he's saying, please, like, I don't get it. Like, how can this be that all men have to be reborn again? And then Jesus says, you don't understand the things I tell you now. Simple things that are about, like, earthly things. Simple things I tell you, you don't understand. So how am I going to explain this heavenly thing to you, right? Like reincarnation. How am I going to explain reincarnation to you when you don't even believe some of the simple things I tell you? And that's what Jesus said. And that's where we see right there reincarnation. And now we have this knowledge. But before in that time, Jesus couldn't explain that because the people wouldn't believe it or wouldn't understand it because they weren't as evolved and weren't capable enough to understand that back in that time. But now we are able to, and that's where we can see this passage and use Spiritism to grow on it and help explain it. So next week we'll spend more time talking about how reincarnation actually applies to what Jesus was talking about. But before we leave off today, I'd like to read our message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone for today's date, June 11th. Hitting the target. I never hit a shot, not even in practice, without having a very sharp and focused picture in my head. Imagine preparing to hit a golf ball with no idea of where we want it to go or how hard we need it to hit. Even the best golfers would fail miserably with such a handicap. In fact, the best golfers prepare to hit a golf ball by doing just the opposite, making the shot in their mind first. They see their shot and feel it in their bodies before they even hit the ball. Having the image in their head allows their body to do what is needed to make the image real. I will visualize myself succeeding at one of my goals. How does it feel in every part of my body? What do I see as I work towards success? Holding this image in my body will help me achieve my goal. If at all you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email me at cardiacradioforteens@gmail.com and I'll get back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.